just go to one instead of,
Yeah.
it's like going to McDonald's versus
And,
making your own supper, right?
That's exactly right. Sometimes
Greetings.
the spins out.
We welcome everyone to the August 19th, 2026 meeting of the Cook County Housing Redevelopment Authority. I first note the presence of a quorum, Commissioners Olson, Hanson, O'Brien, and Lamour, and Gabler. Also, we recognize our two county commissioners, Commissioner Sullivan and Commissioner Gamble. We also recognize Lucas Wakefield, the Executive Director of the Cook County and City of Grand Marais Economic Development Authority. Welcome, Lucas. With that, I think we'll get to the agenda here, approval of agenda. Any changes to the agenda?
The only change that I would make is that there was an amendment that came through from Freiberger, our attorney at Freiberger at 4:30 that I emailed last night and was able to get in front of you today in print form. And so that's the discussion that we should go off of for the ordinance portion of the conversation today.
All right, thank you. With that, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve.
A second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next is approval of the July 15th, 2026 meeting minutes. You've had a chance to review those, and any thoughts or corrections? Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the July 15th meeting?
I'll move.
Thank you. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then on to the approval of the July 29th, 2026 meeting minutes. And we've had a chance to look at those as well. Any concerns or considerations with those? Or is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the special meeting minutes.
It's moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And opportunity for public comment. Anything that you'd like to say, Lucas?
Thanks for having me here, but no.
You're the member of the public, so we'll pass on to new business. And Jeff, you want to take us through what we should be considering here, please?
Yeah, so in front of you, you have the most recent red line of the agreement, or the ordinance, rather. As you can see, I might not have given myself a copy. Yeah, thank you, sorry. You might have seen there are a couple of changes to it. For instance, we're no longer asking the Cook County Commissioners to pass the ordinance, because under the 2025 statute, during the 25 legislature, they decided to give us the very narrow window of authority to pass ordinances specifically to create local housing trust funds. Specifically, it had always been the general rule that counties and cities were only prohibited, or only allowed to have that power, but with the 2025 session, they allowed HRAs to also have that as well. And so in the state of Minnesota, we happen to be the only one that has done it. Other ones have already done it. So for us to do it is kind of unique, but, I think, and also the same point needs to be made that we're only about 5 years old as an organization, and so we've gotten to that point now in the last year where we can do it ourselves, and so this makes perfect sense for us to do it, and we were given that authority to do so. So you'll see at the top there, it's the Housing and Redevelopment Authority of Cook County, and then instead of Cook County Board of Commissioners, and then that basically is the rest of the changes that you see in this red line form that's in front of you here just reflect that. Overall, the general provisions of this allow for us to create the local housing trust fund in Cook County. And attached with this is also a set of guidelines that you all gave me the go-ahead after we passed the 2025 strategic planning conversation documents. You know, there were 5 different priorities, one of which was local housing trust fund. I'll be honest with you, I thought this was the low-hanging piece of fruit because I thought it would be easier for us to get this done. But we've had to wait, and we've waited, and now we're at the point where we decided to go ahead and do it ourselves. And we've had our legal folks draft it and get it to where we need it to go. And so the guidelines themselves were already created back in October. At the end of August, you gave me the go-ahead to start working with the Minnesota Housing Partnership to create those guidelines. I took a couple of case studies of other guidelines across the state. Crow Wing County comes to mind, and there are some others as well. I think I've slightly changed those guidelines to fit more of what Cook County's needs are, and I think we also added a new category as well. In the past, it was a workforce housing assistance program, home buyer assistance program, rehab assistance program, and new construction, but the rental stabilization assistance was missing from other counties' documents. And because, you know, the state of Minnesota passed the rental assistance program through the Department of Revenue back in 2023, that's great, but if for some reason that no longer exists in 10 years, it would be really nice to have the capability for us to continue with that. And so a program like this is definitely where we would want to go as a backstop for that. We have seen a dramatic decrease in the funding from when it was initially passed in 2023. Our numbers were about $83,000 a year for the first 2 years. And then in 2025 was reduced down to $38,000, so those numbers got switched. And then for 2026, our numbers are $43,000. And so it was flat at a higher level, and then it dipped, and then it kind of bumped up a little bit by about $6,000. But if something were to happen in the future and that fund totally disappears, I wanted to make sure that we had included that in this, so that way the local housing trust fund, when it was established, the folks that are in charge of that fund, whether it be us, as the discussion is, or not, or community members possibly as well, that we are allowed to have that authority to also have those dollars available for that. So before you, again, you have both the ordinance for discussion today and then also the guidelines. Now, the general scope of events here is that after the discussion today, if you decide you do want to go forward with this and feel comfortable with maybe massaging some of the language, I'll take your feedback today. I will adopt a new draft, and then I will have to advertise that in the newspaper. And then after that, we will have to have a public hearing in September, like we've done in the past for other land conveyances. And then after that, the full ordinance has to be published in the County of Record newspaper, which would be happening after after our September meeting, and it'll make the newspaper just a little thicker. I don't think there's a problem with that from their standpoint. They'll print it, but that's kind of the series of events as it stands right now. So I'll take your feedback and your questions and ready to listen.
Well, go ahead, Commissioner O'Brien.
Jeff, I'm just looking through the documents and just trying to make sure that I understand who it refers to the funding decisions are made by the authorizing, by the board.
Yep.
Can you just, probably buried in here, but can you just explain a little bit, what the function of how the fund is administered? How does that authority that administers it relate to the HRA? Is there something that shows up on our books? Is there something that, I just need a little bit more background.
Yes, it definitely will be affiliated by the HRA. The funding mechanism for this going forward will be the 1% program that we have already kind of earmarked those dollars for, and we've reserved those dollars for. Through the Cascade Vacation Rentals, they have the volunteer 1% for workforce housing in Cook County. And so we'll be the ones that are kind of auditing, and we'll be the ones that are in charge of making sure that those funds are spent appropriately.
I guess my question was, is there a new entity in charge of administering the fund itself? Is there an independent entity, an independent board that has the authority to manage the fund, or is it simply a fund that's managed by the HRA, and decisions on how to disperse those funds are made by the HRA?
That was one of the things that I wanted to get your clarity on today as a board, of where we go forward, if we are creating a new board, or if we are absorbing that into the duties and responsibilities of the board and as the executive director as well. It really is up to us to decide where we go from there.
I would suggest a conversation about that with our auditors. You know, I think the most clean way, in a sense, would be it just becomes a part of the HRA's activities and would be listed as a separate category of activity. But it may be that there's more issues that an auditor might be comfortable with that we could learn from a conversation with them. But otherwise, that's my advice on it.
Okay.
I would also just say, for better or for worse, I'm a veteran of creating guidelines and programs and for government entities. And my prime example was in 1976. I was the lead creator of the first single-family home mortgage program by a city in the United States. The city of Minneapolis sold revenue bonds and used the proceeds to fund mortgages. And prior to that, it had just been state housing finance agencies who could do that. We got legislative authority and went ahead and did it. I had to create all the guidelines and rules and regulations, did that. And then we got the program operating, and it went well, but I would have to note that once you get the guidelines in place, you're probably not done, because what I noted was sort of like a brand new ship going out to sea, and you went up and it got out in the ocean, sailed around a bit. Gradually, it started collecting barnacles, and when it came back to harbor, it wasn't quite as quick and as slick as it was when it started out. But that's necessary because you find things that either aren't working or that are, subject to misuse or those kind of things. But I think the job you did here, Jeff, was magnificent in the sense that I could tell it clearly came from somewhere. These are pretty complete guidelines, and so thanks for putting those together. And for your benefit, I'll give you my notes.
Okay.
Marked in red ink and all sorts of stuff. I learned that from my dad. And then, but I'd be happy to, to have a conversation on anything that you don't understand in there. But it was, I really think the job was excellent and be a very good place to start.
Yeah, as I said before, the guidelines themselves, the Minnesota Housing Partnership was really resourceful. I talked with Elizabeth Glidden over there, and we had a series of conversations every 2 weeks since mid-August until about mid-October, so about 2 months. We met virtually, and we discussed what I had put together, and I had questions, and she was able to find something that one county did or another county did. Really wasn't quite like reinventing the wheel, because a lot of this stuff is pretty similar in other counties. Which was nice, and it was really kind of one of those things that I'll be honest with you, a lot of consideration, a lot of thought put into it from other counties, but a lot of thought I put into it with Elizabeth as well to make sure we got what's in front of you together. I'm really hopeful that this will do something, and what I think that I want it to do mostly is I want it to be a vehicle for us to be able to acquire or get money from other places specifically for the impact of Cook County housing in a way that our HRA really doesn't have that access to. whether it be philanthropic organizations or the like. I'll be honest with you, I'm still trying to figure out, and I did ask our attorney, Chris Verta, to weigh in about direct soliciting of some of the 1% supporters in the future. He didn't feel like there was any statute prohibiting that, but he's looking, and he's connecting with some other folks as well. And so I'll have more of that information coming down the turnpike here soon, but I can't say enough about how that 1% money is going to help create this. That we have over $100,000 sitting in the bank, and we still have access to that matching funds with the state of Minnesota. That means we have over $200,000 that we have this fund to start out with. That's not nothing. That's something. And we may not be able to spend that $200,000 right away. Maybe it's just a small fraction of that to keep the fund sustainable. But if I'm going out and we're going out and asking people to make a contribution here or there or something like that, we can safely say we already have some funding in the bank and we already have a mechanism to keep this sustainable. And I think that that's something that we should all be proud of as well.
Commissioner Hanson?
Never mind.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, please thank Minnesota Housing Partnership for their help. And what I would, last thought I have is the administration of this is going to require some help.
Yeah.
And I don't know the form of that help yet, but I can tell you that once you start getting into the rehab grants and trying to get people into home ownership, there's different ways of accomplishing that, but it's not going to be only the executive director. So
Yeah, that's fair.
at some point we'll have to consider that. And if I'm reading the guidelines, and I marked it with a question mark in there, it seems as though we could pull some administrative money out for some of the activities in there from the fund itself, and that might be a source. And but that's consideration in the future once we get moving. But I just want to make sure we're thinking about it ahead of time. So.
And if I might, go ahead.
Now, Commissioner Hanson.
So that circling back to that, the injunction against commissioners asking for private donations to this, that was
Yep.
Jason Hale.
Okay.
Very emphatically said that at the meeting, like that is illegal, can't be done.
Mhm.
But I have not been able to find a single reference to that anywhere in statute.
Yep.
Might be worth a phone call to him to see where he got that idea.
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause
And he's probably watching now. Hi,
That kind of
Jason.
sent us off on a side road that we didn't need to go off on, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
Unfortunately, but.
Sometimes
but I-
out of precautions, right? I
Right,
get
we want to
that.
be careful, but
Yeah.
I can't, I'm glad you're getting the legal opinion, and I suspect his first blush is correct, that there's nothing in statute that
Yeah.
forbids that.
As far as I know, Commissioner Hanson, you're the studied authority on that law because you actually read it. So thank you for that. Commissioner Olson?
We're all lit up here.
I was just going to make a quick point. I understand the frustration with being led down one path and finding that might not actually be the case. My personal opinion, based on my professional practice, is especially in cases like this where it deals with the administration of funds and it's not just the matter of statutory law, but also the appearance of a conflict of interest or misappropriation that I think is, for me, it's important to not lose sight of. In something
That
like
is
this.
mentioned in the statute very clearly.
Yeah. So if we have done our due diligence and found that there is no such prohibition, and therefore we can go out and do all of these great things that's further the mission of the HRA, then wonderful. But I think the due diligence is an important thing to do.
Thank you. And Commissioner Olson had his hand up. Oh, Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to comment. I would underscore your statement, very wise. After your barnacle story, I would say that there has to be something that would define the percentage of any administrative cost that comes out. So I'm sure
that that's something that could be found
It's-
out.
I
What's
think it's-
allowable, given the
limited.
I think
experience.
it's in here.
It's limited to 10%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a number, maybe 10%
But shouldn't be
or
anywhere near
something.
that.
Yeah, no,
That is appropriate under, yeah.
yeah. That might be a barnacle.
Yeah.
Other thoughts that we can give Jeff as he moves forward, and I guess at some point, like perhaps right now, we could call for motion to approve moving forward, as Jeff has suggested, down the path of setting up the Housing Trust Fund.
Yeah, the next step would be, again, me putting it in the newspaper. I can do that tomorrow. It's at least 10 days, but I can order it for the next edition, which comes out, I think, it'll be too late for this edition, so it'll be the edition after, and take a week anyway, but, and then after that, we'll make sure that we set forth the public hearing and advertise that as well at the same time. And if you all agree to this, then yeah, September would be when we actually have a vote on this, have the public hearing, and we set ourselves forward. I'll go back to a comment that was made about, increasing the size of the HRA and that sort of thing. What I could do is, I've gotten to know a lot of people in what I do, executive director. I could ask some of the folks in some of the other HRAs, what did you do once this was done? Did you create a new position or a half-time position or some sort of a contract or something like that, and how did that work out? I might do that just as kind of a case study after the fact, but I think that you're right. I think that one extra responsibility is important, that we start thinking more about the future. And we're kind of dealing a little bit with growing pains. We've done some contracts to help that. I mean, we've got a great note taker now. That's one less responsibility that I have. The notes got better, so even better. Make sure that's in the notes, Maggie. Give us some credit, okay? But, those are things that happen once we're successful and we start taking on more things at once.
We use fund accounting because we're a government entity, and probably if we're going to just keep this in-house, you still need a separate fund that's separate from the other HRA activities. I'm
Yes.
sure of that, but
Yep.
That is specified in here.
And, yeah, special account, yep. Yep.
yep. Any further thoughts here, or is there a motion perhaps, or thoughts from the county commissioners at this point?
Just timeline, Jeff, you had alluded to the progression, that the comments and the discussion, if you're posting in the paper, there should be an approved, a draft that accompanies this discussion and the notes. So your timeline, even though if it can happen before the placement, which is next week by Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday.
Fair point.
But your earlier comment was, this is the progression we'd be followed. So we have the discussion, you take your notes, then you get it refined, that should be looked at, and then approved, it's going to get posted.
That's a
if
fair
I'm not
point, too.
following. Yeah.
That is a fair point. So we could do that one of two ways. We could have a special meeting to do that, or we could move it another month to September, with October being when we actually pass this. That is a good point.
So I'm confused.
Yes.
We didn't make any substantive changes to the
Bill's
the
got a
document.
couple.
Do we have
Bill's
to?
got notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Bill's got some red line comments.
Well,
Of his own.
I do think that should be something that the whole board considers, not,
Okay.
not,
I agree.
not something on the side.
Okay.
So I don't know, are they so extensive that we can't cover them today, or?
Oh,
Well, I don't think we've got the time. I mean,
Okay, delay us a
I went
month.
through page by
It'll
page.
delay us a month, then.
I could certainly, we could make copies of this for each commissioner, if that would help. I mean, they're in color, and some of them are just questions, some of
So
them are.
we waited this long, I guess.
Listen.
But I do think those should be made available to all commissioners.
I agree with that.
Otherwise, it looks like a
Could that be done
I could
via
take them
emails?
into the office and get copies right now, if that would be helpful. And you
That'd
could
be great.
continue on with your agenda.
Okay.
Just table this for right now and come back to it.
okay.
Is there anything driving this from a timeline That's relative to dollars, available dollars.
I would say to that answer is I'd like for this is my personal gut feeling, I'd like this to get accomplished by the end of this year. And I feel like maybe that's consensus if I'm reading the room. So we have the time to get to that point. I mean, unfortunately, we're already at the end of August, or at least the midpoint of August, and I don't know how that happened, but clearly the minutes still say July. So I'm having a hard time reconciling with that fact. But we just have to have it done, I would say, by November, so that way I can start going to the state and saying, hey, look, are those matching dollars still available? Here, I want to show you, we've got this account, the local housing trust fund has been created. Can I access those matching dollars?
Well, then I'd recommend that we do distribute my notes around, but also the September meeting would be for a final hearing on what we want to submit, and then we'll adopt it in October.
Okay.
If that meets with people's thoughts, 'cause I do agree we ought to have a vote on whatever is final here and put that in.
Is your changes to the ordinance or changes to the guidelines?
Both,
Both.
yeah.
Okay.
I think it makes sense to do it.
Yeah, both at once.
Yeah.
Cleaner, that's for sure. Yep, and we want to be transparent and we want to be above board every time. And so I think that that would be fine. And I appreciate you bringing that up today.
All right, well, is there a motion to preliminary approve this matter of conduct where we'll vote on the guidelines themselves in September and go on to October for a final effort?
I'll move for an expression of support for this, to move forward.
Been moved, is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded, any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
Thanks.
And I'll review your copy of the changes and then I will send that off to everybody. We can't actually have like a back and forth conversation if I email either. We'd have to do it in a public forum. So I'll do it as I always send everything out, blind carbon copy, so there's no accidental, reply all. And then you'll all have that in front of you for the next meeting, and we'll again have it in the agenda packet. And if you have any additional changes between, that would be the time is between this meeting and the next meeting to get them to me so I can.
And maybe our goal should be not to take as much of the Cook County News Herald as the city of Grand Marais does when they only publish their minutes every 6 months. And I did note that was quite a lengthy issue, and, which is fine. I mean, that's a
Kept
fine way
Brian
to
up.
do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to other business in that case. Director's report.
Director's report. A couple of things I just wanted to keep discussing and keep updating you on. The 1800 Highway 61, the Arvada Flats, last night at the EDA meeting, there was great conversation, some great questions by the members of the board. It passed unanimously. And so we have both copies here. Commissioners O'Brien and Gabler, if you're available here, and then we're not at 4:30 yet, afterwards, just come down and we'll have you sign, and then I have to round up the vice chair and the chair of the EDA, and then we'll do that tomorrow, and then I'll have it sent over to the developer, and then once the developer signs it, then I can have it recorded, and we've got ourselves a developer's agreement that's been recorded, so that's progress.
Do you want to mention any particular questions or points, or perhaps Lucas could, if there's anything we should know? And the reason I'm asking is I had lunch on Monday with Peter Clissold and Mayor Benson, who had some issues and questions more than issues, I'd say, and I think we got it cleared up. Their main concern, I believe, is that we've got to keep this on track because we can't lose the money from the state. And they were concerned that we lost a bit of time on our own at the HRA, just being direct about it. while things were percolating and then not percolating and all that. And I could only agree that time is of the essence, and I think that hopefully the developer's lined up by now, at least with what he's committing to once we get to him. And
Yeah.
but it was a good conversation, and I was happy to actually they'd bring the concerns, to us that way, and I appreciate their partnership on it, and really their partnership, because they're kind of an unindicted co-conspiracy is the way I remember it in the old days, but they had to apply for this project and ran from the Housing Finance Agency, so they're indelibly mixed into the thing, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, and so a couple of more things on that, part of the conversation, I was just checking my email because I'm expecting an email from the folks over at P&R. I did have a contact with Gary Latz over at the Heights, and he was able to tell me that, you remember part of the amendment that we made in the special meeting on the 29th had to do with the flexibility for qualifying people to get into those rents. And there was Gary told me there were 2 instances since March in which we've had that. One was because they were using the 2025 rents, and then if you switch to the 2026 rents, it only became only one of those 36 units that had to qualify in order to get into those rents. And so it's not a lot. We're not doing a lot of those rents in order for that to work. But what it does do is it provides flexibility, so they're not saying, sorry, you have to live somewhere else, you don't qualify, you make $300 more or something like that, $1,000 more or something like that. I did talk to Megan. Megan's going to be, Megan from P&R Properties, she's going to be emailing me with more details from the Gunflint view, but she did tell me that flexibility was really important, but, they had one unit that was an AMI rented unit, and she told me that there were 6 applicants for that one unit. And that was over the course of this weekend. She said she couldn't shut that listing off fast enough. She still had people coming in and asking about that. And so I think we're doing something right. With this 1800 West Highway 61 project, it's dedicated funding, but it's workforce market rate housing. We actually lost a couple of points in qualifying with the Municipal Housing Finance Agency because we also said we were going to subsidize some of those rents there. We're doing that because we're allowing more people to have access to Grand Marais. It's kind of like a microcosm within a microcosm, right, of a community, of a neighborhood. And that's the benefit, people to have access to our community, so it's not just one economic ability. Now, Megan had also said to me that, those folks that are living, that are getting the market rate, well, they don't qualify for any of that flexibility stuff. They're making what they make, and they're able to get access to those as well. And so there's some of those market rate units that will also be available at this as well, so at this new construction. So
I would say that their main concern was, of the city, was that they weren't familiar with what we'd done with Gunflint View and with the Heights, and so
Yep.
the key was explaining that to the city council, and that's been done, and so I think we got settled down on that issue.
yeah, it might come up again in the September 2nd meeting, because that's the next time the city council will be meeting. We were supposed to be on the agenda today at 7 o'clock, but unfortunately, the city administrator wants to make some changes to a resolution that was passed a couple of years ago to better reflect the funding, timeline, and that sort of thing. And so we'll be delayed until September 2nd on that front, but we'll have also the property description, which was something we had ordered back in May, and we were able to finally get agreed to on Friday of last week. And so we're moving at breakneck speed here in some regards, but in other regards, it's just like we're waiting for the right people to hear the right news and go forward with that information. So we'll have all of that ready for the September 2nd meeting. in the process there, if anybody from the community or any of the council members, I've been talking with Tracy a little bit because she had some questions about, and I connected with her in the last week. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has before the hearing, before the meeting rather, but we're moving forward on this, and I really think it's kind of a I wouldn't say once in a lifetime, but for that standpoint of the dollars, once in a lifetime opportunity for us to create something like this for Cook County. Because $1.3 million in public funding just doesn't happen overnight in a lot of these developments, especially, maybe in the metro area it does more often. Greater Minnesota less often. I feel strongly, as somebody who advocates strongly for Greater Minnesota in the past. But for us to have it, it's nice to be able to utilize it. I don't know, there are other communities that receive the same amount of money and are not maybe having the same luck that we're having in finding a developer who's willing to step up and meet the timeline. So I really appreciate that for what it's worth too. The next one I wanted to bring up was this Norriscogan. I don't know if you all have had a chance to go out there and take a look at the property itself, but I was out there last night and took a couple of pictures. We're at the point now where we are asking the IRRR to give us their last remaining dollars of that $350,000 grant that they provided us for the project. And so I went out and took pictures. The manhole covers and the sewer lines are in the roadway. There's a fire hydrant in the middle there. There's a T for backing around and turning around instead of a circle. But and there's also home construction. And I think that that's really unique and nice to see. It's kind of like if you grow something by seed, all of a sudden you start to see the plant rise out of the ground. Well, we're seeing houses now rising out of the ground. That's a good sign. There are two construction loans that have been processed and 2 closings that have taken place out there of the 12 units. And so I was out there about a month ago and things looked a little rougher than they do look now. The culverts are in, the drainage is in, the drainage pond is in, and all of that stuff. Last time I was there was a larger sized deer just wandering around the neighborhood, calling it his, I guess, because it was a large sized buck, but it had, it was just not quite developed horns yet, but it was about a 10-point buck, and it was kind of fun to see that too. But it's nice to see the progression out there. We have some remaining dollars of our matching funds. They're still going to go towards the project when we get the final invoice, which should be happening pretty soon. Like I said, we did the final report with the IRRR for that loan, or for that grant rather, and that's all I really have to say about that particular item. The Birch Grove property is the next item. We are going through the process of getting wetland delineation now, and a survey will happen in due course as well out there of that new 64-acre parcel that we acquired through the county. Thank you for that. And that will give us a better understanding of what percentage of that property is available for development of homes. And from that, we can market that as well as, like I say, perhaps mostly likely phase 2 of what we already currently have available, that 29.3 acres, again, behind Birch Grove School. I've had some very, very preliminary discussions with MnDOT about how we would get people out of there and into there off of the Highway 61 in that area. And so we'll continue to have those conversations, because I think those are really important as well, especially if we're putting a population that didn't exist there and now all of a sudden will exist there. We want to make sure they get in and out of the highway and onto that road safely. And so that's really important. So more information about that in the future. And then also, I don't have anything substantial. I don't have any names to give or any contracts or anything like that, but I do know that one individual asked me if they had the opportunity to walk the parcel, and they're a developer, and they came up and took a look at it. So from what we understand, at least now, we've got somebody that's at least 1% interested, enough to want to take a walk out there. Whether or not that transfers into something else, I don't know, but they've asked for information. I've provided them with some of the information. I'll provide them with a little bit more information, and we'll see where that goes from there. But you know, as you remember, one of our goals is 2027, we were going to find somebody to develop that area, that 29.3 acres. And I'm still hopeful that we can find someone that's really going to want to take an interest in that. Whether or not it's a land trust is going to be something that's really going to be up to the board to decide. I know that there has been some conversation about whether or not we do land trust. I will tell you that the only ball game in town, so to speak, when it comes to land trust is one roof community housing. And I had a conversation with Jeff Corey last spring during the St. Louis County, Cook County, Lake County days at the Capitol. And at that time, they indicated they were more interested in working on the Nordic Star expansion in our community, which we're grateful and appreciate that. But we still need to have somebody that's willing to do something in terms of being able to allow for a land trust there. So, for what's worth, it's still something that's out there as a question.
Commissioner Hanson.
Can I just clarify on that a little bit? In my conversations with Executive Director Corey, it's not that they don't want to do the Birch Grove project.
Correct.
They just have limited capacity
Right.
to do. They have a lot of balls in the air.
Right.
And so they're not able to take on a project of that size right now, but I do think they're very interested. So it's not an either or, either Nordic Star or that. It's
Right.
maybe next year.
And thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Sorry if I misspoke on that. That's exactly right.
And I think there
You're-
are other mechanisms for getting land trusts going. I know the Township of Schroeder has a land trust.
Oh,
So
They do.
there's something we could explore.
Oh.
That was actually a very successful project that happened 25, 30 years ago. Created a bunch of housing up on the Kramer Road. And kind of a similar situation to Birch Grove, like a pretty desirable piece of property, and they went in and just platted it out basically and then sold it off for people to build their own homes, and it filled right up and
perfect.
it was interesting. So, you know, if one roof doesn't end up having the capacity in a timely way, there may be other avenues we can use.
Okay.
I think it's really important that we keep the land trust concept front and center, because otherwise, especially in a place like Tofty, the affordability is ephemeral. It will go away and wealthy people will start buying those up for vacation cabins, so
Certainly.
we need to avoid that. Otherwise,
Yeah.
what are we doing? Yeah.
Yeah.
For visible progress, though, on the Birch Grove School site, I would note that the Sawbill Outfitters billboard is up.
Oh, is it?
And, yeah, I'm not sure, did we get our $1 and other valuable consideration?
Oh, I better hunt down that
The
$1.
township.
Yeah, I don't know that we did yet, but we did execute the agreement and all of that stuff, and so we have 50
Looks
years to
nice,
collect that
actually.
$1, I think, if I remember right. So we've got some time, but I drove by it on Monday night. I usually drive through during the daytime, but at night it was lit up and it looked really nice, and I was impressed with it. So.
It does.
Yep, I knew that it was coming. It took a little longer. I think they said they wanted to get that up in May. It ended up being, I think, last month that it was put up, but
And I hasten to say, I honestly knew nothing about it, and have not seen it, so. No connection to it.
I am curious about the steps that we could be taking proactively or in advance to establish a land trust designation for the property that might facilitate affordable housing development on that site. And
yeah.
maybe, but I don't at this point have a good grasp of what those steps are, how much they cost, what's the level of effort and so forth. So
There was, little known fact, there actually was a Cook County land trust at one time that Joan Drury started.
Yeah.
That was the Mink Ranch. And then it was progressing, they hired an executive director, and then it suddenly folded. And I never really understood why, but.
I guess a request would be maybe for for next month's meeting.
Yeah.
In the director's update, if you include.
My
a description of what
strong
steps
preference
we
would be to work with One Roof, just because of their expertise and history, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
if they're incapable of doing it in a timely way, then I think we should examine alternatives.
So I wrote down that Schroeder Township had a land trust on the Kramer Road, so I'll look into how that was done, and then I'll reapproach Executive Director Corey over there and see in 6 months if there's been a change in that interest. But I really do think that a land trust would be a fantastic way to reduce the cost of housing in Cook County and to get more people to be able to access these single-family homes.
And I can tell you from meeting with the town board of Tofty, that's very much their interest.
Absolutely it is.
People who work for Bluefin or any of the other employers down there, is that was why they gave us the acreage behind
Correct.
Birch Grove
Yep.
School to start with, and we, well, I promised that's the direction we'd go.
Yep.
And so keeping that in mind, and one roof brings the same benefit, though, to that effort, or would if they were able to do it, as the Vision is bringing to the 1800 project, and they've already got one development in place. They can manage, two is better for management than one, and they know exactly what the community was looking for and have produced it, and that's just exactly what One Roof is all about, so. Commissioner Hanson.
If it's okay, I want to change the subject. I have a question for Jeff on the Creechville Hamilton Habitat project that we approved the application to IRRR last meeting and the wetlands delineation. I had a conversation with Anna Hamilton, and she was feeling, at least on that moment at that day, somewhat discouraged about that. Do you have any news on that? And should we be applying to the IRRR if
Yep.
it doesn't look like that's going to happen?
Yeah, so we did the wetland delineation, but it needs to go through a review, an environmental review. And so that's still in the TEP review is still going through the process it needs to go through. Whether or not we are going to have an application for that particular site, I think that's something that she was really more interested in still. I actually had a conversation with Anna yesterday morning over at where she works, and she gave me permission to talk to John Loy, her engineer, to get a breakdown of pricing. A little bit of an interesting thing there is that I've had someone reach out to me that has property in that same vicinity saying, hey, look, we wouldn't mind having water and sewer in our building as well. So maybe there's an opportunity to do some cost sharing to get that established. But there's a lot of things that are still kind of evolving in with that project as well. So I'm hopeful still that we can get something for an application this year. But realistically, it's already mid-August. So I don't know, but we've had the wetlands delineation come back with a little bit more wetlands that were originally identified.
It's right in there.
And so maybe and perhaps what we're looking at could be done at a different site. And so that's part of the conversation as well. And no triggers have been pulled. We have somebody in the community who's going to be writing the grant. If that's the decision, somebody had requested that they volunteer to write the grant. We will still look at it and make sure that it meets the needs of an HRA type of a grant application to the IRRR. But, I think at the end of the day, we want to be good partners, and we have to work under the timeline that we're under. So, but I'm really looking forward to getting some of these different things landed, because I think it's important that we look at housing. That type of housing isn't something that somebody else is constructing in our community, and so it's really nice to keep that ball rolling.
I'm not casting aspersions on the housing, just that if that site turns out to be unworkable for whatever reason, then we shouldn't put in a unnecessary application to the IRRR that we back out of later.
Yeah.
We've already backed out of one large IRRR grant, we don't want to back out of two. So that's my concern.
Yeah.
Thank
Yep.
you. Next on the agenda, unless there's more, is financials.
And there's just a couple, I'll combine this with the Finance Committee report. I mean, the financials themselves, relatively quiet month. There's two major transactions. One was the receipt and then pass-through of the money from IRRR for Norris Gogan. It was $93,500, and then there was the disbursement of the to pay for the wetland study at Creechville. It was just mentioned at $3,500, and other than that, just normal rent and payroll. Jeff and I did touch base a couple days ago, and he was mentioned that he was describing that he's doing some exploring how the financials could be made more clear in the presentation. One of the challenges is that the way that we have our budget category set up in our budget does not align with the budget categories that we have in QuickBooks. And so, as a result, it takes a fair bit of work to try to, if you want to track how are we doing relative year-to-date versus our budget, actuals versus budget is just in my view, an unnecessary degree of work. So Jeff, maybe you can just describe a little bit about some of the work that you've been doing and what support you need.
Yeah, on one front, I've been connecting with QuickBooks to see if there's something we're missing or something additional that we need to subscribe to, and take a look at that. And then on another front, I'm actually working with some of my compatriots and in leadership and housing authorities in other parts of the state to see what they're doing. And then thirdly, I'm reaching out to our auditors to see if there's something that maybe we're missing completely that we already have access to. So between those three fronts, I feel like next month we're going to have something more substantial that we can say, hey, look, in lifetime, this is where we're at when it comes to year-to-date, what we projected versus what we spent. Yeah.
I would propose maybe why don't we just have a scheduled conference call with the auditors, and I'd be happy to join just to explain the concern in more detail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ideally, our financial statements on a monthly basis ought to be in pretty much the same format as what the auditors come up with at the end of the year, because otherwise it takes them a long time to make all the adjustments themselves. And it's not a huge amount of money, but it takes time, and it is money that could maybe be better spent on a different way of getting the job done. And if I'm remembering this correctly from the last community meeting, leaders meeting, Care Partners was offering accounting services to nonprofits, and my guess is we meet their definition enough where I think we ought to be in touch with them to see what they offer. And it's another thing to.
This will be our third year that we've done an audit with Redpath. Before that, the county had assumed those responsibilities. And so in the 3 years that we've done these audits, Redpath hasn't once said to us, hey, look, QuickBooks isn't doing it, we need something else. But also, I don't know that anybody's really ever asked the question either. So maybe there's something we are missing that we could definitely, and I'll schedule that and make sure that you're scheduling that with me. So, yep. And we'll have, like I said, we'll have a better understanding of where we're going to go in the future with our auditing stuff next month.
Yep.
Any other thoughts on financials? Otherwise, that was the committee report. And commissioner items, anything that commissioners want to bring up? I would say that at the meeting with Mayor Benson and Peter Klissel from the EDA, the discussion eventually got a little bit broader and talking about the future. And I, without trying to speak for the board itself, but my own thoughts of what I can see in the future here is that it's unlikely we'll be pursuing more multifamily housing development in the city of Grand Marais for some time, because we'll have 3 projects, and let's see how they do before anything else happens. And realistically, it's unlikely we'll be doing multifamily projects anywhere else in the county of any size, other than perhaps Birch Grove School, if there's a decent site there. And so that probably our focus at the HRA would be more on single-family housing rehab. We'd really like to see that rehab program expand, more dollars in it, more dollars to the homeowners than it is, and that's really part of what's in the guidelines for the new housing trust fund, which is good to see. Or new construction, and I mentioned Norris Scogan was a great way of setting up future possibilities, and then of course Hamilton Habitat is, we want to keep them going. So, but that's a little different focus in a sense than the excitement of doing multifamily projects and the stress of it and all that kind of thing. But it's just in the future. So I think really where that leads me is to suggest perhaps the board ought to have a strategic planning session
Yes.
to update where we are and to have, and that brings up another thought. It would be helpful as we see things going on and get reports as to projects or developments or ideas, how does that fit in with our 5 priorities that are in the strategic plan? Even the old one, it's not that old, but so that we can kind of tie this stuff to what we've said we want to do and measure what we are doing against that. So
Technically, we have 8 priorities. We have the 5 new ones from last year, and then we have the 3, which were, of course, rehab, brand new development, and redevelopment as needed. What I would say is to the extent of the energy and envelope program and that sort of thing, there's 3 people on the wait list, and so they are taking wait list folks, and that's really important to note. The last of the dollars is spent, so there's nothing more left, and so now it's going to be a matter of us continuing to try to find new resources. That might be through the small cities development program, through the Department of Employment and Economic Development, or some other means. Of course, the legislative session's always around the corner. We can be having discussions with our legislators about that as well. And I know that there has been some discussion about the future of the healthy housing program that we have as well, because unfortunately it sounds like there were some challenges in getting a new grant for that. And so it's kind of both at once. It's really important what we're doing, and we have the infrastructure to do what we're doing. So I think that's really great. Other counties don't have what we have, what are the track record that we already have with that program. Thank goodness for those ARPA dollars, and we're able to use those and inject that into the community and create healthier environments for people to live in. And so I know all of you have told me we're all in on making sure that we have more of those resources available for energy and for the environment in which is healthy for the people who live here in Cook County. So I continue to find funding wherever I can, and there'll be some more conversations, I think, about that. There'll be a small cities development program. They'll be having another invitation to apply in October. We've had some preliminary discussions about working with the city and working with EDA to do a little bit of everything at once in that application. So that gives us a little bit more of an advantage by showing that we have that partnership in the community. So more about that, and stay tuned.
great, thank you. Any further items here, thoughts? Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mentioned to Jeff earlier that the Association of Minnesota Counties has an annual conference in December. I brought this forward previously, but they have now opened up their RFPs for the conference, and one of the requests that Commissioner Gamble and I got back at our District 1 meeting in June is that they would be very interested in us talking about the success we've had in creating housing in Cook County. Many other communities are really fascinated with the success that we've had. And so I just, I don't want to take on something. Again, it's an RFP. It's not necessarily a done deal. But I would be happy to work with our executive director on developing an RFP if this group feels we would like to share our success with the rest of the state of Minnesota.
Well, I think you'd be a great American if you did share that. and I think that it could be a broader effort than just the Association of Counties, because that story could be out in other venues as well, and we ought to be proud of that, really, and thanks to all of our partners. That honestly, none of this happens by ourselves. The county's support was key, and ARPA funds were key, and you can go through a whole list of things. The EDA's participation in 1800 is a key, so we've been blessed, and I think that's part of the Cook County community, honestly, are those partnerships, and that's been developed over the history, and I've been really pleased to see it, and I'm really pleased to live here because of it. And so I think, I don't want to speak for Jeff, but I will.
You're a chair.
We think that'd be a good idea, because I think that tells well to the legislature as well,
Oh,
if we're
Well-
going back there for.
And one of the thoughts I had is, we're sharing our story with, the other 86 counties in Minnesota, but it also gives us an opportunity to get highlighted with NACO, which is the National Association of Counties. And so we share our story, we're sharing our process with people, but it also may give us an opportunity to connect with people who would eventually fund us.
That's a comment that I would make, that
Wonderful.
it contributes to your branding. So the storytelling is huge, and it would give you more credibility when you're out asking, because you're recognized. Yeah.
And it's not a huge, it's a 1-hour presentation that we would put together. Again, it's December 7th through 9th. I would have no idea at this time, number one, if we would get accepted, number two, what days it would be, but I can certainly work with Jeff on that and put together a presentation.
That'd be great. Yeah, it's so important that we keep the 1861 project on track, because that's a major funding piece that if we were to lose that, and that was the city's point too, is, they're still behind the land gift, because they really, they understand that's important to our community, so. Jeff, add that to your work list.
It's on the list here, and I'm
Please.
happy to talk to you more about
Please.
that. Yeah, yeah.
We have matters. Any other thoughts?
Might be a couple legislators there too, who knows?
Precisely.
Is there a motion to adjourn, possibly?
I'll move to adjourn.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yep. I have to take you down to the auditor's office. Yep.
The preliminary budget, we gave it to Brady.
I've got this red line version here, so.
This will be announced at tomorrow night's meeting, but the contracts for both Karen Blackburn and Jennifer Rodney the contracts haven't been
Jeff.
signed. But
Yes.
they've been agreed to. So
I just
Karen
want
would
to
get
make sure this is-
$6,000
I'm not going
a year
anywhere.
for doing all the book work.
You got it? Good job.
She's accepted.
Okay.
early
Well, we did it.